All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is happening in this war at the moment, we're being joined by Ms. Helen Battle, who's a former director at Israel's National Security Council. She's joining us on this broadcast. Ms. Battle, now that Israel has managed to take out Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon, has Israel achieved its objectives in its offensive within the Lebanese territories?
No, I think there's still several objectives that need to be obtained. First and foremost, to ensure the security of the citizens of Israel, and in particular of the northern part of Israel. We need to make sure that Hezbollah's stockpiles of especially long-range and medium-range missiles is significantly depleted. There has been talk about UN Decision 1701 as something to go back to. Well, that can only be acceptable if there are actual enforcement mechanisms, because we've been there before, and the next day they are completely disregarded. And probably no less important is right by the northern border of Israel, a perimeter of about 10 kilometers in which Hezbollah has carved tunnels, much like Hamas has done, and is holding anti-tank missiles in there that it's using to target our northern border. And I would remind you that we have around 70,000 people who are away from their homes, displaced in our country because they're being shelled. Their houses are being shelled on a daily basis.
Now, Hezbollah has said the reason why it has been carrying out these rocket attacks into northern Israel is because of the fact that the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip have been under the pump for almost about a year now. Hezbollah has said that if Israel were to stop bombing people in the Gaza Strip, then it would stop attacking people in northern Israel. Is this something that Israel would be willing to consider at all?
Well, this is a connection made by Hezbollah, but let's face it, Hezbollah has had a long history of bombing Israel and threatening Israel's northern border. In fact, we now know that the plan that was carried out by Hamas on October 7th was actually a Hezbollah plan for the northern part of Israel. So that connection, take it or leave it, irrespective if a ceasefire is to be achieved in Gaza, that's a pretty simple equation as well. We have hostages there that need to be released. So as long as we have a leader of Hamas by the name of Sinwar, who's not even in contact with anyone, is not even responding to these kind of suggestions, so it's unclear what kind of deal would be made there. In any case, we no longer have Nasrallah to negotiate with, and it's really hard to understand if we have a Hezbollah to negotiate with at this point, because the organization seems to have severely imploded over the last few weeks.
But do you think that the focus that was there on trying to get the release of the Israeli hostages that was there till about 10 days ago has now completely gone off the radar because of this offensive that we are witnessing in Lebanon?
I don't think it can ever be off the radar for us in Israel. There's very, very strong.
But there's very little talk about getting the still remaining hostages back from the Gaza Strip. What we're talking about is this offensive that is currently happening in Lebanon.
It's true that while you were engaged in an intense set of operations, the way we've seen over the last 10 days, then the discussion about a hostage deal is moving aside because of the war operations. But I will remind you, it was raised in the UN just yesterday by the Prime Minister of Israel, who brought with him some of the families of those hostages. It's not the kind of issue that can ever be off the radar for us. We remember those over 100 people every day, and that is the number one goal in terms of public interest, in terms of what Israel's interests in this war are. So if for a few days it's eclipsed by very, very dramatic happenings in the Middle East and Lebanon, very strong successes for Israel, that's one thing. To say that the hostages will be forgotten, never.
And also at this point of time, it's widely regarded that Hezbollah has an arsenal of about 120,000 missiles. With the Israeli offensive on Hezbollah inside Lebanon for the past week and more, to what extent do you think Israel has managed to degrade some of the missiles and rockets that Hezbollah has in its arsenal?
So we know numbers are still there, even if we estimate, let's say we estimate around 50% were dealt with. We still know they're very, very large numbers. We know the Hezbollah did very little use of its long range missiles. But the fact is that Hezbollah's command and control chain has been severely, severely harmed. Not something that is going to be easy for Hezbollah to reconstruct. That doesn't make it any easier contending with tens of thousands of missiles aimed at Israel, and that's why the operation has certainly not been complete, despite some great successes. But we're talking about very large arsenals amassed over time, and we've already seen today Iranian planes trying to land in Lebanon to start and reconstruct that command and control chain. Unsuccessfully, the Lebanese turned them around because there would be some very costly actions for that.
Now, my final question to you, Ms. Burrell, is a lot of people, the critics of the Israeli strategy would be saying that Israel is trying to look for a military solution in a conflict which is essentially very political in nature. Do you think there will be some level of reassessment about the Israeli tactics in the days forward to try and reach some kind of a political settlement for both with the conflict in Lebanon and also in the Gaza Strip?
Well, I don't see the two as contradictory at all, especially not on the northern front. There's no doubt that there were military goals that needed to be achieved. Nasrallah refused to negotiate on the terms of 1701, enforcing it, moving north of the Litani, allowing Israel what it needs in the northern border. So there was a military need to address these things. Of course, it can never end just in military action. Of course, there has to be, at some point, a political arrangement, settlement that settled these things. And hopefully this time around allows not only peace and quiet for Israel, but for Lebanon, the people of Lebanon who've been under Hezbollah's boot as well, as I think is very clear to see celebrations in Lebanon once they heard about Hezbollah and Nasrallah's demise.
All right, we're completed out of time. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Khaled Beryl, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we also earlier spoke with professors, journalists and political analysts around the world to gain an insight into the impact of the killing of the Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah. Listening to what was said.
Today is a good day for peace. Today is a good day for the world. We have to remember that Hassan Nasrallah was an arch-terrorist, a mass murderer, and the leader of one of the world's largest terrorist organizations. He had the blood on his hands of thousands of people, not only Israelis, but Americans, Europeans, Argentinians, people from all over the world. His death is something that is not ought to be mourned, but instead it is a day for peace.
Assassination of Hassan Nasrallah is a serious blow to Hezbollah, from which it will take some time to recover. It's an important symbolic blow. Nasrallah was the overall head of Hezbollah's political operations, its links with other groups, and its military operations. He had been that leader for more than 30 years, ever since he was 35 years old and rose to power in the 1990s. There is no single Hezbollah figure who can replace him at this point.
The fact is, if you see the big picture right now, the war is devastating all around the Middle East. And this is what we are, this is terrible for all the people and the population here. Because if you see the Lebanon right now, the establishment, the displacement, the evacuation of people is being happened. What is the place for evacuation for these people? Nowhere. Syria is the no place to live right now. So this is very bad situation.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.